This is Coder Radio, episode 108 for June 30th, 2014. Hi everyone and welcome to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show, taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our excellent host on the East Coast, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Hello, Mr. Fisher. How are you?
I'm good. It is feeling like summer over here. I'm not saying I'm Superman, but what I'm trying to relay to you is that the yellow sun gives me power. You ever? No, you know.
So would you go as far to say that you get a funky high off the yellow sun? I mean, is that?
Well, I wasn't gonna go there. No, I don't know why you know what you want to know what gives me a funky high? Commercial software.
Oh, wait. You said commercial software.
So since you and I have spoken last, Mr. Dominic, I have been graced by, we have a really excellent audience. Like, we have the best audience ever. In fact,
I'm not sure I would go that far, but keep going.
Oh, you know what?
That's just a false belief.
So
Richard is out and about today.
This is why I'm telling you we have a great audience.
That theory must be wrong.
I think that we should all make those businesses fail.
We've been receiving RMS clips. Like, here's a new one.
And we need to teach Canonical a lesson. This is egregious.
That program, although it may be attractive, is really a trap.
Perverting free software.
I think you'll probably like this one.
Look up at the moon one day.
So we have a really great audience. I want to say thank you to everybody who's been sending us in their favorite RMS clips. Coder Radio at JupiterBroadcasting.com. And thank you everybody who's joined us live on this Monday over at jblive.tv. You guys don't forget to bang, suggest, and help us title our show. We'll vote on that at the end of the episode. Mr. Dominic, we have a lot of follow-up from last week's episode. Like, you struck a nerve, I think, my friend. Resonated deep with the people. So are you ready to start with our first feedback? Should we just jump right into that?
Yeah, but I just want to interject here. Unlike RMS, I am the people's champion. I mean, let's get real here, right? I'm the Ned Stark of the coding world.
I believe that. Mm-hmm.
So please don't behead me. That's all I got to say, Richard. I know how you are, you zealot bastard.
That theory must be wrong.
Let's go.
All right.
This is going to be so much fun.
Oh, no.
Perverting free software.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not gonna abuse it.
That program, although it may be attractive, is really a trap. What's wrong with that?
It's a trap.
Okay, our first feedback came in from Team Hello World. And I just, every now and then I like to sneak in a good dissenting view. You know me. And he wrote into the show, he says, Mike, you're kind of missing the point of the JS frameworks. It's a battleground. It's an exciting time for JavaScript, and the development around the languages is getting serious. Ember, Angular, Backbone, they're all fundamentally different. The strong will survive. The weak will die off. And the coders actually came in here to say the same thing. He says, what we are witnessing in JavaScript languages, finally, it's maturing. My money's on Angular for one big reason, the Googs. And he's talking about how you can just kind of look at the interest on Stack Overflow and things like that. What do you think of this? Is this maybe a different way to look at this? We're seeing things mature. We're seeing the battleground of JavaScript.
Yeah, I mean, that is the alternate theory to what I said of wasted effort, right?
Yeah.
Richard, anything there?
Yeah. Oh, no, I thought I was going to take a break. I didn't want to overdo it.
You can't overdo it.
Oh, okay.
Get it out of here.
How's that? Is that good?
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is kind of like a, Roman gladiator theory of software, I guess.
Yeah.
Throw them all in a pit and see who gets eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still don't buy that. I still think it's wasted effort.
Well, I mean, don't we see a lot of things kind of develop that way? A lot of standards kind of come out that way as sort of this weird evolutionary organic thing that takes a long time and is not as pretty as something that's just handed over as a solution?
So, right, but how many of those do you need?
Yeah. I think maybe part of what your core argument is that some of these are more based on personality and ego and look what I can do, and not so much about let's fundamentally figure out a better way to approach this problem, right?
Right. A lot of these are the same thing. Basically, it's my
You see it happening on other things too. You see it happen with Linux distributions. There's tons and tons of distributions that are just out there because some guy has a big ego and thinks he should be a Linux distro maintainer. And you see the same thing with cryptocurrency. You see tons of different currencies. You see different people doing currency.
I'm sorry, Kanye coin is definitely.
There's Max coin from Max Kaiser. There's a Let's Talk Bitcoin coin for the podcast. I mean, people can just go off and make whatever they want. And I agree. I think sometimes it actually does. I think it does hurt, actually. I think it does slow things down. I think it does hurt. I'm thinking specifically of all of the wasted effort on Linux desktop environments. Look at all of the different desktop environments, and now none of them fits everybody's need. None of them are perfect, which you can never have a perfect environment. But none of them.
It's called Aqua, but keep going.
Oh. Well, there's big gaps still. And it's, for example, we have people working on Cinnamon, XFCE, GNOME, and Mate, and all these different things at once. And while each has a reason to exist, if half the amount of developers working on those projects just work together on one thing, I think we'd really see something amazing produced. I guess that's just not possible. I guess that's not how the human species works, because it seems to be across all things like this. Like, look at the space races, too. I mean, everything, man. It's all like this.
So you would like to see the Stargate of JS frameworks, basically?
Well, I think what it shows you is what seems almost like a burden and cumbersome on the surface can be sort of used and leveraged as an advantage if you have the ability to have an intuition about what works best for you and how to take advantage of it, and can sort of cut through the ambiguity and just plow right into work. That gives you a tactical advantage in a way. That's what I'm saying. Mr. Dominic.
All right. I get you.
Yeah. Okay, one more from, and how do you like this, Nick? I think he chose this one hoping I'd have to read it on air one day. It's Kwykychin. LYKWYDCHYKYN is how it's spelled. And kind of following up on your thread of a little bit of maybe not so much burnout, but as you just get a little bit older, maybe you start to sort of narrow down what you spend the amount of hours in your day focusing on. He says, the older and busier I get, the more that I see every new technology represents another N hours of learning I have to do to remain relevant, and another N jobs I might not be qualified for someday. That said, the alternative of a mono-duo culture is far worse. My approach is just a leg behind the trends a few years, and let natural selection take its course. As for JavaScript frameworks, I think the reason we have so many is that between its syntax and varying browsers support, JavaScript is at a spot where a little wrapper code can vastly streamline and improve the language. It's reminiscent of the Lisp curse. I like a couple of things here. It seems a little cynical, to be honest with you. Everything new I see coming up represents N hours of my time versus N hours of jobs I might not be able to take advantage of. But it is a little bit of that calculus. So it's cynical in a sense, but it's also just maybe realistic and pragmatic. And that's kind of exactly the position I find myself in with a lot of things. And sometimes, I'm fortunate because I also have a community of folks who prod me, like, Chris, have you looked at this yet? And I'll be like, all right, fine. Everybody shut up. I'll look at it. And then I'll find out it's amazing. Like, I'll be honest with you, Sickbeard was like that. I don't know if you're familiar with Sickbeard, but
I am not. What's that? Hello?
Well, I just don't know if I want to say what it is.
Sickbeard?
Yeah, Sickbeard. I don't want to say what it is because I'm not supposed to talk about the first rule of something that it uses. And then, anyways, let's just say you need to back up some content of the maybe weekly TV variety or something. Yeah,
you filthy pirate.
Right.
You filthy pirate. I hope you get scurvy.
Wait. No, I mean, no, it's...
This is egregious.
I'm sorry.
You are a filthy pirate, sir.
I have young children. And they destroy discs. That's my only defense. That's
barely a defense. You should be ashamed of yourself.
It's negative in the freedom dimension.
So, but this was one of those things I never looked at. And then the audience was like, you should really check this out. You should really check it out. And then I was like, all right, fine. I'll make a little crack in my schedule and I'll take this into my life. And then one day I did. I was very happy. Fast forward a few years, I said something on Coder Radio. Now I feel ashamed. Circle of life right there. So see how the community helps?
We should probably move on.
All right, let's shake this off. Let's shake it off. That's just got weird. It got just weird here. You know what? In fact, let's step it up. Let's class it up. Let's thank our first sponsor this week, DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com. Now, if you are like on it, if you are like a pro, then you can use the promo code CODERJUNE. If you're running a little late, you're running a little behind, I bet you could use the promo code CODERJULY. It's still going to work. And here's what you'll get. You'll get a $10 credit for really, you could use it for the hourly, or if you want to do what I did, get the $5 rig, and then you can get it for 2 months. And so what is DigitalOcean? Because I think once you find out about DigitalOcean, it's almost like a no-brainer. It's simple cloud hosting dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Users can create a new server in about 55 seconds or so, and pricing plans start only $5 per month. That's the one I've got. That's why I'm saying if you get the $10 credit, you can try it out for 2 months for free if you use the promo code CODERJUNE or CODERJULY. Here's what you get for $5. 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one blazing fast CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. That's all right there. That's yours. It's not one of these solutions where you get the surprise bandwidth bill or the surprise CPU bill. Oh, surprise. No. You're going to get all of it. That SSD back storage means the density you're going to get on this rig is crazy. Plus, it's all wrapped around DigitalOcean's awesome management system. Their interface is simple. Their control panel is intuitive, and they have an API that you can replicate a lot of the functionality on a much larger scale. One of the best things is DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. And I think if you go over to DigitalOcean.com, try one out, use the promo code CODERJUNE, so that way you're not paying anything while you check it out, and just enjoy that dashboard that they've created. Think about the software design that went into this experience to manage something as powerful as a KVM virtual infrastructure in data centers all over the world, integrated with DNS management, droplet deployment tools, one-click application installations like GitLab, WordPress, Drupal, all in one interface that allows you to do these things in minutes. Plus, you can do backups and snapshots as well. It's a pretty cool system, and it really does make you feel like you're living in the future. So go over to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code CODERJUNE when you check out. Or, hey, you know what? If you're in the future, CODERJULY. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. SSD power. Okay, Mr. Dominic, we have an email from Brian. This is, we have, let me see. We have one more? Yeah, this is our last one on the exhaustion topic, okay? So I don't want you to get exhausted. This comes in from Brian. He says, you and Michael couldn't have timed this show better. I've been thinking about the exact same thing for all of the different frameworks, as he puts them in quotes, that are out there. My company is trying to move to a new platform for some really aged stuff. And I'm excited about this because I've been pushing for a move for a while. My concern is that the R&D team has started to look at the options and they'll become completely overwhelmed by all the choices. And they'll be pushed back to a Windows-only .NET crapola because at the very least, it's you get what you get type framework. I personally despise Microsoft and their locked-in stuff. The results of .NET development tend to be bloated, full of memory leaks, and all kinds of horrible crap. The devs, of course, love it because it's quote-unquote easy by comparison to what else is out there. So long story short, I know it's too late already, I agree 100% that the options in coding have become outrageously ridiculous. I propose that while this is horrible for the dev trying to keep up, this is great for the companies that have to open new positions to the public when they have a candidate in mind already. So, Mike, do you think all of these choices might be good for the companies in some ways, for hiring or leverage like that?
It's probably terrible for if you're hiring people, right?
I would think so.
Because more diversity in terms of technologies means that the supply is spread over more options. Therefore, supply of a particular technology is lower than it would be, so supply and demand, it's more expensive.
I would also add that the staff that are generally doing the hiring and things like that, anything that makes that process more complicated for them, where they have to know more specific esoteric things about the hiring a candidate, anything like that is going to just make that process suck for companies. So, yeah. But good luck on the transition there, Brian.
Yeah, good luck on the transition.
That's all I think all we have for him. I mean,
Yeah, that's all we have. I mean, if you don't like .NET, you don't like .NET.
yeah, I think that's his opinion. I think it seems like he was generalizing .NET to me.
Yeah, because it's. I mean, if you want to talk about bloated, it's no more bloated than Java, right? I mean,
And it's all about how you do implementation.
right, how you're using it. But it's just interesting that again, Java and .NET do literally the same thing, basically, right? Java the platform, not Java the language.
Yeah. I think I once said on the show that .NET is kind of like Microsoft's Java, but I think that's wrong. I don't think it's so much that. I think it's more like if Microsoft, it was Microsoft's vision of something like what Java could have been. So it's so similar in a lot of ways. It's not Java, but it's so similar in so many ways. It's fascinating too to see all of the same assumptions and sort of critiques that Java's gotten over the years now also being tossed onto .NET.
Right.
So it's kind of gotten all the same baggage as well, which is like, sorry there, .NET. You know what the thing about .NET is, and then we'll get off .NET, is it is like it has a lock on the internal like intranet app development space like you wouldn't frickin' believe, and it's great for system administration of Windows environments too. So the .NET has so much usage. It's probably it's probably beyond anything we could imagine. Zach, and I don't know if it's a friend of the show, Zach, or well, of course he's a friend regardless, but he writes and he says, "Hey guys, to follow up with a question about Linux as a platform to support developers, which is what somebody wrote in about last week, you rightfully said that there is a difference between if it could be a good fit and if it is a good fit. I've published some desktop apps in the Ubuntu Software Center and had good experience, but unfortunately I have not published or responded to updates I've submitted many months ago to many apps. Because Ubuntu is neglecting desktop app developers, I can't help but lose hope in Linux ever being a solid choice for developers, and may personally move away from Linux on the desktop because of this." Zach, that hurts, man. Oh, it cuts so deep. It cuts so deep. Does a desktop have to have a successful commercial app store to be a success for developers? I feel like that's not the right benchmark, but I'm not sure if maybe it is.
So I like his email. Actually, I like Zach's email. I feel like if his argument was just that the Ubuntu Software Center wasn't a success, I would be totally down with that, because it's kind of an abject failure, right? But is the desktop operating itself a failure for developers? I mean, I know. Well, it's funny. I used to know plenty of developers who worked on Ubuntu in particular,
Yeah.
and were doing like web and backend technologies. But now almost all of them are on the Macintosh.
Oh, why you got? Jeez.
Well,
Just
I'm
get my
just,
hopes up, and then you let me down. Well, and I look at conferences that I see going on, and I mean, yeah, it's the same frickin' thing. It is the same frickin' thing. And part of that is because you can run Linux on them, so some folks do that. What I tend to think of is what Linux offers is a great desktop for technical people who want something that is platform agnostic, that isn't going to be pushed one direction or another because the company has an overall goal or trend or vision. I'm kind of referring to Windows 8 here, obviously. Or, who knows? Who knows what the future holds with OS 10? You never know. And if some people just don't want to be married to that uncertainty, they sort of want to have a little more control over their workstation's future. And they don't need the App Store necessarily. Sure, it'd be nice, but there's a package manager. I'm sophisticated enough as a developer. I can install packages from the package manager. I can deal with that. I've got Chrome. I'm good there. I've got all my different, email applications that I tend to like, et cetera, et cetera. I could see a world where Linux fills that role. I don't know if it's ginormous, but what I do know is the people who would be using it in that role are people who pay for stuff. So if you're writing the right application for the right market, I think those people would pay for stuff.
So I think the other thing is, even on the Apple side, we're seeing that straight software purchases, aren't as terribly effective as they used to be, right? So, and I'm not sure that I would really believe this argument. One could make the argument that Ubuntu was just a little late to the party, right? Where your application is now part of a larger service.
Right.
That you're monetizing the service and not the application.
Right. And in that regard, that's in most cases means that thing's going to have a web app component to that. There's some web front end that you could just use under Linux. So you see, as more things do go more software as a service and in the cloud, then you could see how it doesn't matter if it's Ubuntu or Fedora or SUSE, right? It could be anything. Just like it could be and likely will be for the large majority Chrome OS. I really think Chrome OS has already sealed the deal. I think we're sitting here talking about what Linux distro is going to be successful.
Yeah.
Well, Chrome OS is already successful.
Well, it's funny. Even on my Mac, I have the Chrome app launcher, and I'm just, there used to be maybe no apps in there other than the stupid Google ones. Now I have, I have Postman, Hootsuite, Trello, TweetDeck, Spotify, Slack,
yeah,
Gmail, Google Docs.
Yeah, I got I was even trying out an FTP client the other day.
Evernote. I don't use the Mac Evernote anymore. I just use the Google Chrome one.
So I'm thinking, this would never. I was my sort of back pocket personal hope for I/O was a updated Pixel at a much more reasonable cost, because I have to be honest with you. Even though I have concerns about Google, my current workflow, I could use a Chromebook very easily. And if they had something sort of like the Pixel at the $300 price point, I think I would buy that over a tablet. And I think Google could get it to there. And so I think once they start getting something that's really high quality, maybe not quite Pixel level quality, but close to it at a lower price point, I think Chrome OS is going to sell like hot freaking cakes, especially because it's a little bit of an alternative to tablets, which people have had for a little while. And a lot of them have been buying keyboard cases. And oh my gosh, now I get the keyboard, I get the touchscreen, I get the web browser with the apps. Bob's your uncle. I buy a Chromebook. Now, millions of these things are shipping. The top 10 laptops on Amazon, like Google said, are already Chromebooks. Chrome OS is already one. That's Linux.
I'm not sure I'd go quite that far.
I mean, the Linux desktop battle. Just that. I think it's locked it up. I think it's. I mean, there's still going to be lots of people that run all the other distributions too. We'll see.
Yeah. See, I'm not sure that Chromebooks are going to have the market that you want, right?
Right. Yeah.
At least as an independent software vendor,
right.
I'm pretty sure. Schools, government, places like that, sure, but.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. Well, I still think guys like you and me of the future, well, it could be Linux candidates. I mean, I'm happily living on my Archbox right now, and the only time I really ever miss something is when I'm doing a dedicated task like video editing, and then I just have a Mac for that. So for me, the way I've done it is Linux for everything, and then I have purpose-specific machines that are just sort of like I go to those machines when I'm doing that particular task. And if I didn't do those tasks, I mean, there's not much I couldn't do on Linux right now. It's pretty much all there for me because most of it's either, a native local application or a web application. So there you go. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, Zach, but it's a good question. It is a challenging time right now, that's for sure. Hey, we had some last-minute feedback sent in by Rusty in the chat room, which I added here to the doc. So Rusty Fox wants to make sure that we mention the Rust language has an update coming. He says, could you mention this in the show, perhaps the feedback, that Rust 0.11 will be released tomorrow. It's an extremely cool language from Mozilla, and only a few people know about it right now. There's even a game engine written in Rust, and he links us to the Piston game on GitHub. And he says, Rust is perhaps the only language which could save us from the low-level folks like C++. Oh. Yeah, so...
Chris, I've been writing a lot of C++.
You want to be saved?
Well, I want to be saved from the platform I'm writing it for. But
which platform?
It is a failing... Well, it's a Canadian platform.
Yeah. So Rust is a safe, concurrent, practical language. It says rust-lang.org. And they have a new release tomorrow from Mozilla. So there you go.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about Rust.
No, I'm going to check it out, though, because I've also seen some folks talking about it in our subreddit. And so it was rattling around in the back of my mind. And then when Rusty stopped in our live chat, see, another reason to join us live on the Coda Radio Show. when Rusty stopped in, he's like, yeah, you should check it out. And it's really cool. And they got a release. And here's a game engine that's already written in it. I was like, snaps, boy. Thanks. So we'll have a link to that in the chat room. All right, well, we got some hoopla to jump into, but first I want to thank Linux Academy, another sponsor of the Coder Radio program. Go over to linuxacademy.com/coders, and that way you can save 20%, my friends, off the lifetime of your account. This is probably not a deal that'll last forever, too, so you want to take advantage of this while you can, because that's a really great benefit. Linux Academy is an amazing resource. They have step-by-step courses that let you self-pace and teach yourself something that maybe is something that would make you more effective in your job, something that might make you more employable, or an area that you've been wanting to expand into. And just recently, too, we were, on the Faux Show. We had an email on the Faux Show, and the guy was trying to kind of zero in on what he wants to do system administration-wise. And the benefit of something like Linux Academy and the model they have that while you have an active account, you just get access to all of the course material. You can try out everything, go in there and see what you have a knack for. See what kind of speaks to you intellectually, what makes you curious. And the great part is they have self-testing and pace tracking, so you can go in there, try a little bit when you have a half hour one night, go back maybe Saturday if you've got a couple of hours to stash some time in there, and you can keep going. And if you feel like, have I forgotten something? Take a self-test. They've also got course material you can download and save offline. You can get audio versions and video versions of course companion material. And the greatest thing is, if you're somewhere in the course and you need to try something out on a live server, in the back end, the course material triggers off their automated system that these guys have built from the ground up to spin up a virtual server for you. This is awesome, too, if you're taking some of their AWS courses, which they're adding to all of the time. Again, another reason why it's a great benefit to become a subscriber, because they're adding new content all the time. So like the AWS Certified SysOps Administration, right? Or the Certified Solutions Architect. When you're taking these courses, they not only do you get an AWS instance that's part of your service already, so you don't have to worry about that cost, but they're giving it to you with scenario-based training. So you work through a solution that involves EC2 and S3 and Amazon Web Service, all of these things connected together. So that way when you go out to deploy a solution in the real world, maybe something you're billing somebody for or something that you've committed to your employer for, you've already gone through an actual scenario-based deployment. So you're already comfortable and familiar with the process. It's a really great way to learn, and it's backed up by a really active community. New content being added all the time, and folks that are crazy passionate about supporting Linux, training people on these kinds of things, and getting the word out there. Check out the course study notes. You can run any 7+ Linux distributions, and the courseware will automatically adapt to the distribution that you choose. It's super cool. So go over to linuxacademy.com/coders to save right now. linuxacademy.com/coders. And a really big thank you to Linux Academy for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. So, Mike, after Google I/O, I was sort of going through everybody's Google I/O coverage. And I have to tell you, one plucky, adventurous tech startup on the East Coast really caught my attention with their write-up of Google I/O. It was extremely glowing and positive. This company is all in on Google. You might have heard about them. It's Fingertip Tech. And on their official blog, they had a Google I/O 2014 recap. 5 reasons why Fingertip Tech is excited about Google I/O. Tell me, Mr. Dominic, are you excited?
I am actually surprisingly excited. We put up 5 reasons here, right? I did not personally write this, but
number 1 was material.
Okay, so just as a little sidetrack, do you notice how Google had to bring on stage the guy with the long hair and the hipster outfit?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, no, guys, he's a real designer.
Right, yeah. Look how hipster he is. He must be legit.
Look at this guy. This guy would never drink Starbucks right here.
Yeah. AeroPress is just right off stage. Yes. I did notice that, yes.
But anyway, I actually like the material design. I think it's the right direction in terms of aesthetics.
You don't feel it's too heavy-handed? It sort of mandates one interface for all.
Well, I think that's the way all the other platforms are going, though, right? So it's very familiar in terms of iOS 7.
Yeah, and Windows Mobile.
And Windows Phone, yeah.
Phone, right.
The thing I would say is that I'm a little concerned, how do they they're not going to be able to backport material, right? And my HTC One M8 is still not on the newest version of Android.
Right, and I definitely notice I have apps that span several generations now of theme looks. I have some older apps that are still extremely useful, but just they haven't updated the UI.
Yeah, well, my concern is though, what's going to happen when you have these, new material apps on your phone, and then your phone is still Samsung Android?
Right. Is it going to clash?
Is it going to clash? Yeah. But that brings me right into my next thing, where Google is controlling the visual experience of Android Wear.
Not just Android Wear, my friend. Android Auto, Android TV,
True.
and the big one, AndroidOne, their new emerging markets initiative. Also, all updates for all these devices directly from Google. The UIs cannot deviate. Like, for example, the Google Music app and the Spotify app on Android Auto look exactly the same, just the colors and the logo change. What do you think of that?
I think that's awesome. I wish they had gone a step further and said all subsequent Android phones must adhere to these UI guidelines, period.
Yeah, and I am glad they're doing this, but I'm also so angry. I am so mad because it is an acknowledgement of the fact that they screwed it up from the beginning. They had a chance to make this right because it was a new platform after we had learned the lessons of the bad PC days. They had an opportunity to nail this at launch, and instead, they punted for market share, and now that they have the position and power and authority and nuts, frankly,
right,
now they'll do it. Now they'll do it.
So someone in the chat, and let me see if I can get his name, is Alex Bell, makes a good point, though. Because material's not in the Google Play Services package, you literally have to have the updated OS to do this.
I wonder if AndroidOne could eventually become
Android, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way. So the other thing is, this problem is a problem only nerds care about, right?
That's true, yeah. Well, and developers that are making the apps.
And developers.
Yeah.
But when Joe consumer goes and buys an Android phone, he doesn't necessarily know that Samsung Android is not Android. But Samsung, please don't render the colors differently. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess I'm harping on Google too much for it. So there's something else that was one of the post I/O interviews was with one of the lead Android engineers, and they were asked just point blank. I covered this in Tech Talk today. What's the future of the Nexus program? Are you shutting down the Nexus program? And he said, no, we're not going to shut down the Nexus program. We can't. The reason we can't shut down the Nexus program, Google says there's no way to build a mobile operating system unless you build it specifically for a specific device. That's why
Apple
Google
must have been like, preach it, brother, preach it.
I mean, to hear that is so frustrating because it acknowledges essentially Google's been this whole time been like, no, we can make a general purpose platform that works across all these devices. It doesn't need to be specific to any particular phone, any particular device. Don't worry about that. This is the future. This is the way it is now. It's cool. But in reality, they too are building for a single device because it is the most sane way to build an operating system that is as comprehensive as Android. So I feel like what we got this last couple of weeks was major admissions to things that people have been questioning, like, but this doesn't make any sense. All of a sudden, Google's like, yeah, you know what? We should be controlling the experience, so we're going to be doing that from now on. And, oh, yeah, you know what? It is better when you build your operating system for a specific device. It turns out that's a better way to build an OS. Isn't that major reversals?
It feels, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It feels a little disingenuous of them, right? Because how many years have they been saying, that they're the more open, free alternative, and when they're saying actually the closed, tightly coupled way was the way to go.
And I can totally understand why they do it. It makes a lot of sense. So what it means to me is that, and I guess that we kind of already knew this, is that all other Android phones except for the Nexus phones, the operating system wasn't built for that device, and it's been manipulated to work on that device. It's not the intended implementation if it's not on a Nexus device. So essentially, if you want the intended Android experience, I mean, we kind of already knew this, but this really seals the deal. You need to buy a Nexus device.
Again, the Nexus devices aren't a huge percentage of the market, though, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, but okay.
And, yeah, it's
that's Android's. I mean, that's just an Android thing. What did you think about What did you think about like the Android TV initiative and the Android Auto?
So for me personally, the biggest thing was actually Volta. Because as a user and a developer, the biggest pain I have on Android is just the battery life isn't quite where I would like it to be.
Sure.
And it's like a blame button, right? But both in the way as a user, if I see certain apps are using a ridiculous amount of battery, I'm going to delete them. But also as a developer, during debug time, I can now more efficiently test my apps for memory usage.
Yeah, I'm glad to see. I think the thing I like about Material is I like the attention to making things look nice. And the thing about Volta is it also is like, hey, yeah, we're going to give you new and shiny, but we are also working on trying to just get that battery. Also, art should, I think, help with battery life a little bit as well.
Again, yeah, another huge but very nerdy, very developer change.
Yeah.
They're talking about some serious performance increases.
Well, and tip of the hat to Google too, because they can change that kind of thing out on the fly, right? And how much work is it going to cause developers? None, right? As far as I know, they don't even have to touch their apps.
No, none. You just recompile. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. I like that kind of thing. So there is definitely some good stuff here. What did you think about Android apps on Chrome OS? Did you understand how they're pulling that off at all?
It looks like some sort of emulation. I'm a little more skeptical about this. I don't know that there's a need for this.
Well, I mean, like we just talked about how there could be a lot of Chromebooks selling, and now you write an Android app, and it's also available to that same Chromebook market. That could be a lot of people.
Right.
And you could okay, so you brought up Chromebooks in education, a huge growth area for Chromebooks, right? Well, what if a lot of these schools also want Android tablets? Now you could make an application for that school district that runs on their tablet and runs on their Chromebook. That's a genuine, legitimate, full-fledged application, not a web application. That's actually kind of compelling, I think. I mean, I don't know if there's like a really super wide market use for it, except for like obviously things like Evernote. But in terms of like businesses, enterprises, and schools, it sort of gives you a consistency across Google products, even though they're not the same operating system. I just wasn't clear on how widespread the Android apps on Chrome OS thing was, because they only showed a couple of things. They didn't say if they have like a runtime that runs on x86 or if they have somehow ported those apps. They weren't clear on that in the keynote. I couldn't tell. Interesting, though. I got to ask you about Wear. What do you think?
Oh, God. Yeah, the Moto 360 does look pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, did you watch the keynote? Did you hear the audience go, "Aw," when they said it wasn't available? That was really good. Yeah, because I'll tell you too, the LG and Samsung watches look like clunkers.
Well, one interesting thing is, there's going to be a lot of interesting integration points for developers.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely. I mean, all of this stuff is spot for developers to send their applications. So, overall, pretty interesting.
Pretty interesting. I mean, as a user, there's going to be some privacy concerns with, pretty much all of this, really.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think that tempers some of my excitement.
Yeah, and that's kind of the elephant in the room whenever you're talking about Google and Android and that whole thing. It's okay, but one thing is they could tell you exactly how many selfies were taken and how many of them were, I think, like duckies or duck faces or something stupid like that.
Yeah, it was almost like a little a little nudgy way to say, yeah, we can get data out of all this stuff, and this is how we can show you this data. It was like a little kind of nudge, wink, wink example. I thought it was a little, well, to be honest with you, creepy, because it was one of those things that went by. And then about 30 seconds after it went by, I went, wait a minute, how do they... Oh, they probably are analyzing every picture.
Right, and what else are they analyzing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some...
Well, and like, what do they analyze when you use the voice command on the watch? If somebody's yelling in the background of your audio prompt, do they analyze every time there's an emotional response in the background of your? Do they somewhere in the background keep a profile of how many times there's somebody angry? They very well could be. And the other thing that I think is interesting is, like, I looked at my Google Now cards today, and they had the time to my kids' daycare on there, which is helpful. But now Google knows that I put my kids in daycare and what days I put them there and, what time I'd normally be leaving to pick those kids up. And that's a little weird because I don't know if I necessarily want to have in some checkbox in some database in Google that I have kids in daycare. I think that's just, for me, for some reason, it doesn't sit well with me. I feel like that's personal information. I don't know why. So there is this sort of give and take, and I've been asking myself recently if I would actually be more okay with less functionality but more privacy. And I think it's a pretty clear yes. In fact, I didn't really find it to be that much of a question. The more of the question is, how do I actually pull it off? How do I get something functional that works well enough for me, that provides me the functionality and, also is in a device that I actually want to have? And so I'm kind of in an interesting time right now. I've been trying out Ubuntu Touch, Firefox OS, and the latest Android on my Nexus 5. And it's not really working for me on any of them, to be totally frank about it.
Ooh, that's not great.
Yeah. So I have the great folks at Ting are going to send me an iPhone 5 to try out for a little while. I'm going to give it a go with iOS 8, see how that goes for me, because I've tried all the other ones. So I'll report back on that at some time, because I won't be under any NDA.
You'll be an Apple fanboy shortly, don't worry.
Well, I don't know. I think the 5 screen's probably too small for me. But we'll see. We'll see, Mr. Dominic. We do have a book recommendation to cover before we get out of here. Do you want to do that, or do you got anything else on the Google I.O.s?
Let's do it.
All right, Nick wrote in, and he said, after the discussion this week about Google disrupting markets by introducing a free competitor, I thought I should recommend this audio book. It's called Free, The Future of a Radical Price by Chris Anderson. Basically, his big idea is that eventually all digital services will be free, or at least one of the competitors will make their offering free. He describes the economic forces that make this inevitable for all digital products. Fittingly, the book itself is free to download. He includes a link to that. He says, if I'm honest, the author has me convinced. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to be in the position to profit from this in the future while all the curmudgeons are complaining about their antiquated business models. Wow, Nick. Thanks for the book recommendation. That sounds pretty compelling. Mr. Dominic, where would you like to send folks throughout the week while we're between shows?
fingertiptech.biz. Ooh.
Oh, I noticed you had a .biz for that blog, too. You're pretty fancy. You got the fingertip.technology, too, right? Man, you're just all over the place. You're all over the place with those. You know what? Here's a domain I don't give out too often. jblive.info. Huh?
Ooh.
jblive.info, it gives you an option to have an MP3 stream of either like a high quality, like 128 kilobit, or a low quality if you're maybe on mobile, need to save some bandwidth, or on the road. Then you could tune in live, because we do the show live Mondays at noon Eastern, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern over at jblive.tv. And you can help name our show, hang out with us. We have a little pre-show time too, so it's always a good time. Don't forget, we also want your feedback over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and click that contact link. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of Coder Radio. We'll see you right back here next week.